Hello everybody, welcome to The Knot. Today we have Scott Tannenbaum on here with myself, Scott Freymuller. Scott is a 5th degree black belt in Jiu Jitsu. He was an actual MMA fighter at one point. And the point of this show today is to talk about mental health, thought, breathing, different things like that. We talked a few shows ago about different things you could do to maintain mental health, to alleviate stress, to physical fitness, things like that. So I'm a little nervous here because Scott's like 3 times my size and beats my ass every time I see him. So whenever that's going to happen in the show, I'm not really sure, but we'll move the table out of the way and let that happen. But
I'll be ready.
Yeah. So when we were getting started, we were joking around and how like your size, like you're a big dude.
Yeah, I haven't
So
always
what the
been.
fuck did you eat?
I haven't always been. I was actually, I was a really skinny kid. I shot up like 7 inches in like 7th, 8th grade.
So I still have hope.
You still have hope. Yeah,
Okay, all right, I just want to make sure.
I mean, I didn't reach your size till about 4th grade. But basically, like my freshman year in high school, I was 5'11". I got up to 5'11", but I was 135 pounds. So I was a string bean. So that's when I started really hitting the weights, and I put on like 10 pounds a year, like consistently. But yeah, I was always tall for my age, but I wasn't big.
Right.
I was super lean. I actually had to go on a high-fat diet. My mother took me to the doctor, and he's like, "Yeah, you need to bulk up."
This is in Jersey. You grew up in Jersey.
Yeah, I grew up in Jersey, like the land of the weightlifters. So everybody was
massive.
Juiced out. I was
Like Jersey Shore type stuff.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So yeah, I went to GNC back in the day, and they had Mega Mass 5000. It was literally 5,000 calories per serving. I blew out 3 blenders on it. I put like peanut butter in it, raw eggs, whole milk, and I would have to I would take a swig, and I would have to get under the faucet so I didn't throw it up. I'd have to take a swig, get under the faucet, drink it down.
That's so
And I put on like 20 pounds the first, I don't know, probably 2 months.
And you did that for why?
I just wanted to get bigger. Everyone talks a lot of crap in Jersey, so they were calling me twig and this and that, and then I was getting in fights over it. So
Is that how you got into jiu-jitsu?
No, I've been in martial arts since I was 4. I got into it literally, usually like today the parents put the kids into it. I was 4 years old, and I remember watching, they had Bruce Lee week on TV, so a different Bruce Lee movie on every day. And I was sitting there watching it with my dad, and I'm like, that's like magic. I need to do that. So I begged him and actually found a Kung Fu school, put me in it, loved it. And then I did that for a couple years. And then I got into a fight with a kid on the playground. And you're watching like those old black belt theater movies where they kick them and the guy's doing a flip and they're out cold. And I'm roundhouse kicking this kid, and he's not going down. It went nowhere. And he got tired of fighting me, and we basically just walked away from each other. I went home, stormed in. I'm like, I don't want to do this Kung Fu stuff anymore. It doesn't work. I need to find something else. So we went to this martial.
You decided that in 4th grade or 5th grade?
4th grade. Yeah.
4th grade. No, it doesn't work.
No. It wasn't even 4th grade because I was 6. So it was like 1st grade. And so.
You're so messed up.
And I'm like, I wanted it to be my passion. I loved fighting.
So you knew this from the start, like the very beginning.
It was in my blood, like from birth. I really truly believe that. And it's something I always wanted to do. And then I found Aikido, and I did that for 15 years. And then later on, I got into other martial arts. But I was actually just telling someone yesterday, it was 4th grade, and we had to do these presentations, these speeches in school. And it was, what do you want to be when you grow up? And, all the boys were like, I want to be a fireman. I want to be a policeman, a fighter pilot. Mine was, I want to be an assassin. And
Which you pretty much are.
Yeah, but my parents got called in. That was not appropriate. So my parents got called in. I wound up going to see a psychologist for a while. So I'm like, that's what I wanted to be, a ninja. That's just what I wanted to be.
That's cool.
I had started making weapons and things like that. So I really, honestly, my parents thought I was nuts and I was unbalanced, and I was. But it's just something that I was always passionate about.
But you're not. You know, when I started this, we were joking around so much. The intro sucked, so sorry about that. But the whole point of this is like that mental health perspective, right? And you know, you taught me a ton of stuff over the years. I mean, I can't tell you how much you taught me. I think you've seen the progression.
I have.
As a little bit, right? You know, I'm not anywhere near any of the guys in the gym, but it's an interesting progression, and it's an interesting process, like managing not the panic and the thought and the, you know, staying calm and breathing and that whole deal. And that's one of the reasons why I brought you on the show. Not only that, because you're funny too, but that's really the point, right?
Yeah.
Is that process and that manage. You know what I mean? How you manage that as you're going through all this stuff.
Absolutely.
And you started doing that when you were in 4th grade or 1st grade. It sounds like that's crazy.
Yeah, I did. I really.
But did you have anger issues? Did you?
I did. So I grew up, you know, my parents are fantastic and nothing about them, but you know, they were kind of like Russian German, very cold, there was no affection.
There's no I love yous.
No, I honestly don't think I heard I love you until well after college. And never got hugs. I actually remember being a kid and, you know, going to my friend's house and their parents would hug them and kiss them goodbye. And I was like, whoa, that's weird. It was actually uncomfortable for me because I just never had that. They were very supportive in other ways, and always provided really well for me. And we had, you know, great vacations, things like that. But the love and affection just was never there. And that's just how myself and my sister grew up, and that was normal for us. But I honestly feel, you know, that led to some anger issues, and I was always trying to impress them as any kid would. And I never could. I never got like, great job, way to go. So I was always trying to push harder and harder, which now I can look back on, and I actually appreciate that because I feel it really pushed me to accomplish my goals. It pushed me to become self-reliant, not necessarily look for other people's, you know, acclamation and things like that. It's just for myself, but push myself to become who I wanted to, and so forth. So that was honestly a big part of it, and my competitive nature as well. You know, I remember being 5 years old and saying, Dad, let's race. And you know, most dads would run slow.
Dude,
I literally had a dust in my face. I had dirt being kicked up in my face. My dad's running full speed, and I'm a 5-year-old, and you know, he's a quarter mile ahead of me. And I was like, oh, okay, well, this is normal. You know, so that's just how I grew up.
Yeah.
And it really brought out the competitiveness in me. And, you know, as a younger kid and even as a young adult and a teenager, it came out more as aggression and anger. So I would fight a lot and things like that. But I've come a long way since
You were
then.
in that environment though.
I was.
Like that was the environment then. You know, especially we're close to the same age, but you
Yeah.
were like East Coast. You know, Jersey. I mean,
Yeah,
that
New
was
Jersey,
like the culture.
you fight. I
Yeah.
mean, that's what you do. There was
Yeah.
a fight in my school every day.
Right.
I was in fights every other week, and I loved it. I lived for it, and make for some great stories. You know,
Yeah, I'm sure, yeah. And like people wouldn't go get a knife or a gun back then.
No,
it was like
no,
straight
no.
up, you know, just throwing hands and.
It
doing
was,
your thing.
and back then it was, you know, we actually never fought, but we were gonna fight. It was like in 6th grade, and this kid was much bigger than me and so forth, so he thought I was gonna back down, and I never would. And he wound up backing off, so we never fought, and we actually became best friends. And we were best friends through, you know, middle school, high school, college. You know, that's just the way it was. You fought, and you
Then you
respected
became
each other,
yeah.
and you became friends. It was nothing like today.
Yeah, right.
Totally different meaning.
So you go through high school, and then when did you meet your wife?
So I was in college,
your ex-wife,
actually.
sorry.
Yeah, my ex-wife.
Yeah.
So I was in college. It was actually my senior year. It was actually kind of interesting. I was a bouncer. I bounced for years, and I was it was at a Yale bar. So it was in New Haven, Connecticut. And it's funny, the night before I had watched this movie, Dusk Till Dawn, a Quentin Tarantino movie.
That's a good movie.
You know that, right?
Yeah, the one about the vampires. That's badass.
So I'm sure you remember that Salma Hayek's breakout role, Dancing with the Snake, right?
Yeah.
So I watched that this night after I got home, and the next night it was kind of a quiet night at the bar, and I'm at the front door checking IDs, and I'm thinking about Salma Hayek dancing in a bikini, right? And I look out the door, and I see this figure kind of in the distance, and I'm like moving closer, I'm staring at her, and I'm like, that kind of looks like the one in the movie.
Yeah.
And she gets closer, and the closer she got, the more I look, I'm like, is that the one from the movie? And at this point, I got like my face pressed against the glass, right? Like some creep. And she gets closer and looks at me and kind of like looks around and gives me like this awkward wave, and then comes in. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be weird, but I just saw this movie and this girl literally looked exactly like you, and I'm not hitting on you.
But you
And
were.
she's like, well, always a little bit. So she's like, oh, was it Salma Hayek? And I'm like, yeah. She's like, oh, we were actually childhood friends. And I'm like, what?
She actually does look a little bit. Now that you say that.
And she really, yeah, and even more so back then.
Yeah.
And that's how we got to talking, and then I wound up marrying her.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Cool.
So that's
And
actually
your son
so.
Kyle comes along.
He comes along. So I was actually jumping back a bit. We were dating for about 3 months, and I had plans to go to California because I was about to graduate college. I wanted to fight full time. The mecca of training was South Beach, LA, the Gracies, the Machados were there. So I had plans. I'm like, I'm moving to the beach. I'm just gonna train full time and fight. So we were dating for 3 months, and I remember we were driving in the truck one day, and she's like, well, do you really have to move? I'm like, yeah, I'm moving. And she's like, well, what about us? You know, this could become something. I'm like, I need to be honest with you. I go, regardless of where we wind up, jiu-jitsu will always be number one. Are you okay with that?
Wow.
And there was about 20 seconds of awkward silence as we drove down the highway. And she goes, yeah, I'm okay with that. I'm like, okay. So I'm like, this one might be a keeper. So
Wow.
I wound up moving out. She came to visit. She got transferred in her job, and she moved out probably about 3 months after I did. And we kind of dated for a while we were out in California, and that was that.
Wow.
Yeah. So got to give her a lot of credit. You know, not a lot of people would be like, okay, I'm happy to be number two from jiu-jitsu. And I wound up moving out, and I actually had $5,000 that I'd saved up. I had done some underground fights and just saved up money. I would basically go into karate schools and challenge them and say, hey, I do jiu-jitsu. I'd really like to test myself against a master like you. Would you like to put some money down on it?
Are you serious?
Yeah. And most of them would say no, but several said, yeah, we'll do it, because they had no idea. Back then, you know, this is pre-UFC. Well, no, actually this wasn't, but it was still early UFC, and they just, traditional martial artists couldn't wrap their brains around how effective jiu-jitsu really was versus what they were told. You know, their death
Well, Gracie
punch.
demonstrated that in the UFC. Like
He
whooped some
did.
ass.
He did.
Yeah,
And that's why they used toys, because he was so small and weak looking against bigger, stronger opponents. But everyone
That's
just
why I'm
thought
gonna
it was
whoop
a
your ass at some
fluke.
point, yeah.
Exactly.
Right,
Someday.
yeah.
Someday
Yeah.
when I'm in a wheelchair. So they, so I won some money doing that. I didn't have any place to live, didn't have a job, so I'm like, I'm going. So graduated college, jumped on a plane with my bag and some money, started talking to the guy next to me. He goes, hey, well, my roommate's moving out. I live in Hermosa Beach. It's really nice. If you want to come check it out. Went to check out the place. It was amazing. It was like 4 blocks from the beach. Rent was $500 a month. And I'm like, I'll take it. So moved in with him, and I was right in the middle of it. It was perfect. It was right by the beach.
That's
and
crazy.
Yeah. So
you
worked out
grew
really
up
well.
wanting to do that, and you did
Always.
it.
I
And
always wanted to move to California. That was always my goal.
And you did it.
I did it.
That's
I did
awesome.
it. And without question, I didn't care. I was going to stay in a motel until I found a job and all that. And all the pieces, you know, just fell right into place for me.
That's so
It really
cool.
did. Yeah.
That's super
It was
cool.
a great experience.
So I know you don't like to brag, but you're super humble. I mean, you're a badass dude in all aspects of life. As a man, as a fighter, the whole thing. And as a teacher, like, you're an amazing instructor. And I'm not kissing your ass, I'm being serious. Like, you taught, I see you teach people, and it's amazing. Like, your delivery, your method, it's freaking phenomenal. But you were trained by literally the best.
I was.
So how did you get involved with Machado?
So I actually, originally, I was with the Gracies. I had trained with them in Philadelphia. My original school, when I was on the East Coast, I would have to drive an hour and a half each way with my friend. That was the only real Gracie Jiu-Jitsu or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu school back then in the area.
Because it wasn't popular then.
It wasn't. Like, I lived in Jersey, so we had Philly was the only affiliate school. Aside from that, you had to go to California. So started training with the Gracies, and then when I first moved out, I went right to the headquarters of the Gracie Academy in Torrance. And I trained there for a little while, but I started recognizing, and I trained there like every summer. I did like their intensive training course, but I noticed something that I didn't really like with the Gracies. They would really hold back, and when you would ask them specific questions, which I was that guy, I just had questions. Well, why this? Why this? They didn't want to answer. They were very strict about that, and this was more
because of their method, or because they didn't want you to really.
So Horion, who is the oldest brother, he was kind of in charge of everyone. He was a lawyer, very bright guy, excellent instructor, but also very greedy. And he would he sued his own brothers for using the Gracie name.
Wow.
And I was there a few times when he had like this little intercom system, and he had CCV, like that closed circuit television. He'd watch the classes, and if he would see any student do any technique outside of what was specifically taught there, he knew that you had trained somewhere, learned it from somewhere else. In 2 instances, I personally witnessed where he would call the student up. A few minutes later, I'd see them carrying their gi out the door, and they were kicked out of the academy. So he wanted to have exclusive rights. Everything came through him. And so one day, and I trained with Hoyce, who was in the first UFCs and really made the popularity of jiu-jitsu explode. He was one of my first instructors, and we got along great, and he was a good instructor. But he kind of had a Napoleon complex,
Like me.
Like you.
Yeah,
a lot like you.
Here we go. Now it's game on, motherfucker. Yeah. I just don't want to die, dude.
This was open
dude, when you
honest.
choke me out, it sucks. I don't want to fucking die, all right? So that's where that comes from.
I understand.
And I don't back down either.
You don't.
Yeah.
You don't. I give you a lot of credit. I want to give you all credit is due as well. So one day he, I was in class. It was like an advanced class, and I was actually one of the lower belts in the class. And I said, Hoyce, how do you get out of this specific choke? He's like, well, don't get put in it. I'm like, okay, well, let's say I do.
Yeah.
Well, you just don't want to. I go, okay, well, let's say in a hypothetical universe, I get caught in this choke. What are some ways I can defend it? And he's like, well, if somebody shoots a gun at you, are you going to wear a bulletproof vest, or are you going to not be in the way of the bullet? I'm like, okay, I don't even know what that means, but whatever. So he goes on, and people ask him like super basic questions, like, well, how do you do an armbar? How do you do a rear naked choke? And he comes up to me later. He goes, and he kind of made me look like a fool for asking the question, and so I was pretty upset because this was back in like '97, and I was paying $250 a month.
That's a lot.
To train, a lot, right? It's a lot even today.
And not to interrupt you, but the concept of that, like what we do, is you basically suffocate me, and then when I wake up, I'm like, hey, what do I do now? Like, how do I get out of this? And that's
how you
part
learn.
of the training, right? Like, so you can remember and process and be like, okay, I'm totally screwed right now. What do I do? Is there like, what do I got to do?
Exactly.
And most of the time, it's like relax and
it's like physical chess. Yeah. So basically, I was asking him a very legit, and no one really knew the answer. And so I thought it was a good question. And I'm like, he's like, oh, well, you can do this, this, and this. And he told me that in private. I'm like, well, why did you make me look like a fool? And he's like, well, these guys aren't ready for that. I'm like the lowest rank in the room. So I don't know. And so I was pretty upset. And I had heard a lot about the Machados, and all good things. So I'm like, you know what? Maybe it's time to go check them out. So I went to the Machados, and I trained with all the brothers all of them were teaching, and they were super. Any question you asked, they would answer, and just very friendly and hospitable. And I wound up primarily training with Machado, who was like the champion of the family, and he was great. He was always great to me. Just a phenomenal instructor. I learned a lot from him, and he was a very humble guy and just an amazing instructor. So I really took the best pieces of all my instructors, but Hegan was really kind of my inspiration, and he really guided me not only in my jiu-jitsu, but also how to act like a man. Like, you can be tough guy and you don't have to have that persona, which he never did.
Yeah.
And to this day, we have a great relationship. I've trained with him in Brazil. I was recently in California for an opening of one of his new academies, and he gave a really nice speech about me. And I was there with all the original guys. They call them like the Dirty Dozen, which was the first 12 American black belts. And they were all there. And although I wasn't part of the Dirty Dozen, I was with them, and he gave a speech about a few people, and he chose me as one of those people to talk about. And it was really humbling, and it was such a huge honor. And I just love Hegan, and I'm always there to support him in any way I can.
Well, you do every day in your gym. I mean, you share that knowledge with everybody, and they're one of the reasons why I wanted to like kind of start from the beginning is because there's a huge mental aspect to this. It's massive, and this is a really good way to manage stress, to manage trauma, things like that. This is like you were saying, it's human chess. Like, this is actually disconnecting. You can't think of anything else. Like, no mind.
Right.
And it took me like I don't know how long it took me. It took me a long time to figure that out. Because you had Ernie in your gym when I very first started, and him and I would just go to work.
Right.
We would just go until I died.
You would.
Yeah. And then when I started getting some time with you, you're like, dude, you need to calm down. I'm like, what? What does that even mean? Like, I don't want to die. This sucks. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I'd use all the strength I could until I finally couldn't move anymore. But you were teaching me a mental aspect I didn't realize you were teaching me. So tell me about, like, you breathe a certain way, you think a certain way, you're always calm, you're always relaxed, you're always, how did you learn that?
So obviously some of the people I've trained with, like Keegan, I trained with Hickson, Gracie, Hoyce, I learned a lot of aspects from them, but it took me years to really learn, and it's a culmination. I'm still learning every day and just trying to refine everything. But yeah, I mean, and I was like you, like very competitive, and always wanted to win, hated losing. One defining moment for me, which really helped me with my mental hurdle, was I was training with these guys. I think it was like a blue belt at the time in California. I was training with these brown belts, and they were just whooping my ass. And I would go nuts, kind of like what you would do, right? Just wouldn't quit, but using all my, and to the point I almost like would pass out. We went to lunch one day, and he's like, why do you go so nuts? I'm like, I hate losing. I hate getting tapped out. He's like, yeah, but you're getting tapped out. We're tapping you like 5 times per roll. He goes, so why not try to just be more technical and do that? I'm like, yeah, I guess it won't hurt, right? I mean, so I had to mentally just slow down and make myself comfortable in some of the most uncomfortable positions. It took a little time, but I would slow down. I wouldn't go as hard. And then they were tapping me like 8 times. But after like 3 months, I felt what jiu-jitsu is really supposed to feel. And the pieces started connecting for me mentally, physically. And then I was back down using a lot less effort, but they were only tapping me 4 or 5 times. And then after 6 months, I was getting tapped like once or twice, same guys. And after about a year, I actually started catching them once in a while. And I would tap them, and maybe they would tap me, maybe not. So I brought myself up several levels just with the mental aspect of learning to relax, and the breathing, which I really got introduced to through Hickson. Breathing is so important in this, and I relate jiu-jitsu to life. Like,
Totally, that's why
everyone has really uncomfortable situations, whether they be physical or mental, psychological.
Yeah.
But the way that you perceive it and the way that you can control your body through breath. I never realized, like I always thought breath work was kind of for hippies and all that. I'm like, that's not my thing. It's not at all. And the breath work has really allowed me to control my temper. I naturally had a bad temper. And it's really been life-changing. I had high blood pressure, and it's changed everything for me. And to kind of include the breath work into the training, it allows your mental focus to be much clearer. So I'm completely 100% focused on what I'm doing, as opposed to, where's my next breath going to come to? And that panic response. And what happens is, what most people don't understand is, Westerners specifically breathe with the upper lobes of their lungs. And what that does is that releases cortisol and adrenaline, panic response hormones. And what that does is it clouds your judgment. It's a panic, it's like your fight or flight. Yeah, and that's what most people, and you too, right? When you didn't know how to do any of this.
Well, when there's like a 300-pound guy and you fucking can't breathe.
You panic. You go nuts.
I mean?
I'm not 300 pounds, so I can make myself feel like 300, but
it feels like 400 actually.
Yeah, I can make myself heavy. But see, part of that even comes from I'm relaxed.
Right.
So I'm like a sandbag on you versus something stiff where you can just throw off.
Right.
So yeah, it's really been life-changing for me, the Jiu Jitsu and including the breath work into that. It just changes everything. And by doing diaphragmatic breathing with the lower lobes of my lungs, I'm getting 2/3 more oxygen per breath, and I'm not getting that CO2 buildup in my body where you start getting that lactic acid, that burning. You start getting very clouded judgment and lightheaded and all that. And that's one thing that I've really tried to work with you, because you always come in, you're like, let's fight, let's go. And you start swinging for the fences. And, and you've seen what a difference that makes, right?
It does, but there's a huge difference between, like, I have zero talent, right? Giant heart, zero talent. But my primary purpose is to go in there for the workout, but then also like to get that mental aspect from you. You know what I'm saying? Like to practice that in the gym, right?
Absolutely.
There's people like, I'm like super low on the skill level in that gym. There's some really, really tough guys in there, and plus I'm not as consistent as I need to be good anyways.
I think that's the biggest thing. Mentally, I feel like you're above and beyond like what a lot of people have. You have some very rare qualities that I very rarely see.
You say that sometimes.
Your mental well, I wouldn't say no talent, but you have less training than a lot of the other people. If somebody like you though, if we put the time in and the skill set, and so you would be unstoppable, because the mental aspect is what honestly 99% of people lack. I hear all the time, I want to come train, I want to be a UFC fighter, I want to be this and that. And it literally goes in one ear and out the other, because I'm like, you can say whatever you want, I hear it all the time. And that's one thing that you never said. But training with you, I see.
I actually don't want to hurt people.
I know.
Yeah.
But you have the heart and the will that nobody else or very few people have. And that's what really sets a superior like martial artist aside from everyone else. I mean, everyone can go through the motions and do this. And I've seen people in the gym that were absolute monsters in the gym, and then they get into the cage and they absolutely fold like laundry. Like it's sad to see.
Why do you think that, when you talk about that stuff, we talk about that in gym a lot, but a lot of that's preparation too, isn't it?
It is. It's definitely, preparation is huge, and a lot of people don't prepare effectively. They prepare physically, but not mentally, and it's very different. And a lot of that has to do with their coach who doesn't have the experience. There's a lot of coaches out there now who really don't have the experience. They've never actually been in there, and it's very difficult to prepare someone to be in the cage in all aspects if you've never experienced it yourself.
The cage is kind of like, it's that, I mean, I did a couple Naga things. I've never been in a cage. That's a whole different deal.
Right.
But that's like the epitome of stress.
Absolutely.
So you know, you talk about breathing, you talk about all your preparation, you talk about, you know, not panicking and all those things. How do you, I mean, I know you can do that. I know you can train guys because you have a guy, God dang, I just forgot his name. Jimmy House.
Jimmy House, yeah.
He's a badass.
He is.
And he just literally started, and that guy's gnarly. He's like, what, 2 years in or something?
No, he's 4.5 years.
Okay,
but
but
still,
he's like
we just got back from the East Coast. He just competed in the Naga trials and did outstanding. That's the top of the top.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So he's one of those, like you, very rare. Like literally I've met.
But he's young. He's like, what, 20?
He's 25.
Yeah, 25. I'm 51. Yeah.
Right.
I think my days are,
You still got a couple days left.
But
yeah,
he's amazing.
But
and
yeah,
you're
he is.
training him.
And again, the tournaments are a little bit different than the cage, but you have to have that same mental toughness. And I even recently did a post about him on social media, and I was saying, you know, I really did try. I tried to mentally break him into training. His conditioning and cardio is elite. Like very few people have his level and can push themselves as hard as he does. And I have a way of pushing him above and beyond. And I really did my best to break him mentally, and he never quit. He never quit. And that tells me everything. He has the true potential to go very, very far and compete among the elite. And that's the difference, is the mental aspect. People can compete at a high level without, you know, really strong mental strength if they have the physical attributes. But to hit that next level, you absolutely cannot if you don't have that mental toughness. Because you get to a point where you're going against people that are equally skilled with you, equally as strong, equally as cardio, because they've done that preparation. But the mental toughness comes in when you are absolutely exhausted. Your body is telling you to stop. You feel like you're going to die. And you can't, and I see it all the time. People, they'll quit. And then other people like you, like him, will push themselves to the next level. So when your body is telling you to stop, that you can't have any more, you're actually only at your 40% of capacity. So you still have another 60% that you can do. But that mental hump is extremely difficult.
Because you think you're going to die.
Absolutely. And I've been there too. I've been in fights where I literally thought I was going to die because I was so tired.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I was prepared to die. And I'm like, I will not quit. And if I die in the cage, that's a good way to die. And I didn't want to die. It wasn't like I had a death wish. I don't want to die.
Like, progress,
but I'm like, if I'm going to die, this is the way I want to go.
You know, like when you're, you know, you put so much pressure on me, like I literally can't breathe. I'm like, that's cool. You're like, I'm just gonna go until I pass out, because then I'll be asleep, and then maybe he'll get off.
And you do.
Yeah, I do. I'll be asleep, and then I'll wake
you've
up
blacked out
right.
several times during our training.
Well, you know, but I mean, so can you teach that? Do you think you can teach that? Because that applies to life. This applies to life in a big way.
It does, and you can definitely teach some exercises and the breathing and so forth. That will definitely you can teach that, but it's one of those things you can teach someone to a point, but then it's really up to them to see how far they take it. And absolutely can. It's like anything else. With practice, you can really push yourself to the next level, and I have. But you have to be tested, and you have to put yourself in the most uncomfortable positions that are somewhat out of your control to see where your breaking point is.
Right.
And that's the thing. Do you have someone that can, you know, safely, obviously, do that and push you? And that's why it's really important to have a trainer that knows how to teach people that and so forth. And some people just aren't willing to do it.
Well, that applies to life too. You know, there's a few people on here that talk about suicide, and that's a whole nother science, right? Like,
right.
I'm not an expert in that. I'm not a mental health professional, but like what you're talking about is somewhat that. Like, we all have trauma in our life. We all have things going on in our life, and you know, martial arts in general is a way to like practice that mental toughness. Like, hey, I can get through this. Like, I'm going to be good. If I prepare, I'm going to be okay. Like, a lot of the things you teach in your gym apply to life.
100%.
And I think that's why we get along so well. Like, you're a master at what you do, absolutely, bar none.
Thank you.
And I'm pretty good at, my business and my craft, but, we both have the same mental approach to it. We both have the same approach, like, hey, we're not going to quit. We're going to find another way. We're going to keep going, until whatever, not till we die.
100%,
yeah.
right.
But that's a huge deal, and I think that's one of the reasons why martial arts is such a great thing, because it also keeps you mellow.
Absolutely.
Like it gave me, again, I'm not a tough guy, but it gave me like confidence and like, dude, I'll be all right. You know what I mean? I'll at least survive for a little while, but it just gives you confidence in life. It kind of like makes you stand a little bit taller. And like you're saying, there's nobody in your gym that walks around like they're tough.
Right.
No one. They're all super mellow. They're very respectful. They follow the rules. They put the toilet paper on the thing the right way. I mean, what I'm saying?
That's extremely important too. Yeah, they know better. Otherwise, they're going to get called out by me.
But it's such a cool thing, because it really does apply.
Yeah.
And even we talk about life, we've both been divorced and things like that, and we have very similar, approaches to relationships too.
For sure.
But a lot of it comes from that, right? Like, and I have to say that, when I first started going to the gym, I was going so I could race my dirt bike. And then it became like this mental thing, like with you, like, hey, Scott, you got to breathe. Hey, man, you got to relax. I'm like, oh, really? I got to relax. And that applies to life in so many situations, to where if you just chill and let shit be, it's going to work itself out. Like where you try and force things, or you get pissed off, or you try and like, hey, you got to do it this way. Otherwise, you know what I'm saying? Like when you put conditions on things, or you try and force things in life, it never fucking works.
100%.
And that's why this is so important for people to understand, like, the aspects of, sports, fitness, whatever, all those things push you to that level. And as soon as you relax and you start to breathe, you realize, like, oh my God, I can perform way, way, way beyond that 40% where you think you're going to break, but you're actually not going to break. Right. You're going to be okay.
Exactly.
And you have that extra, juice, I guess, or energy, or whatever it is.
And I use the analogy to my students, and this applies again in martial arts, but also in all aspects in life, including relationships. I'm like, I use it obviously if I'm teaching class. It's like the Roomba vacuum cleaners, right? They don't hit the wall and keep smashing into the wall. They hit the wall, they realize there's an obstruction there, and they bounce off and go in another direction. And just like in Jiu Jitsu and martial arts, you don't keep forcing something. When you get resistance, you go the other way. So I apply that in life. Obviously there's goals and nothing's easy. And it's not like I hit a difficult time and I go the opposite direction, but I hit an obstruction and I move around it. I don't let it stop me or impede my growth, my success, my happiness. I go around it. So you're always going to have things that come up in life that don't work out your way. But by doing that, and honestly, it took me into my 40s to truly learn how to do that. And my 40s have been some of the best years of my life. Had some of my best relationships. My business has done better because I don't spend time on negative aspects. I move around them. And it's really been life-changing for me. And even some of my, my students and my coaches, we're close. We talk after class, and I tell them about this. I'm older than most of them, and I tell them about what I've learned over the years, and it's just been so life-changing for me. I used to be very sensitive to other people. I'd be around like negative people, and it'd be, complain about their life, and my life sucks, and this and that. I can't get ahead in life, and I'd be like, oh man, and especially in today's society with, politics and Corona and everything like that. It's very easy to get on that negative spin wheel, especially with all the press and everything. I avoid that. The way I kind of look at life is I like to be educated and know what's going on, but I don't spend my day in front of the TV hearing about all the negative aspects and the crime and people getting sick, because it's something in politics especially, I can't control it. And no matter how I feel about something, the politicians, the health industry, I'm insignificant and I can't make a change. So why am I going to put the time I have on earth into something like that I can't control. Because I feel like a lot of people, they ruin their health. Their blood pressure's up. They feel, so angry and upset and powerless that they can't, and they want everyone to know their opinion, but it makes no difference. So why spend time? And people just spin their wheels, where I'm not going to do that. So I try to focus on, my relationships, my business, my happiness, things like that, things that I can control and I have control over.
Right.
And that's made me, like I said, some of the best years of my life. And
well, you're a humble guy too, though. Like Shelly and I go back and forth on here, and I always tell her, I'm like, I don't have any enemies. Like, I don't dislike anybody. I don't hate anybody. It sounds weird, but like, I love my life and I love people. Like, I actually do. Like we were talking about, I don't really want to fight. I don't want to hurt anybody. Right. You know what I mean? I want to train and learn, but for my brain more than, you know what I'm saying?
Sure.
Same thing with like motocross or any other sports I do. It's more mental for me, and it always has been. I didn't realize that, but it's way more mental, and that's what life's about too. And being able to relax and kind of pull back a little bit and be like, wait a second, what's going on here really? And then be truthful too. Like, you're no bullshit guy too. And I think that's the difference between, being maybe not as happy, I won't say unhappy, but going to that next level of like actually knowing who you are. And being a real person, like being real and self-aware and all those things. You're super self-aware.
I am.
You have to be to do what you do.
For sure.
And that's another great thing about martial arts, Jiu Jitsu, what you do in your gym is like, you can't be anything but self-aware. And I want to tell you an example. I remember one time you were like, hey, you need to get tapped by a girl. And I was like, yeah. And you told me because I couldn't use strength. I think that's when I started changing. And I got tapped by a couple of the gals. They're actually way better practitioners than I was, but it didn't take strength. And that's when I started realizing, I'm like, oh, like that's mental. Like they had mental confidence over me. They had skill over me, and they didn't use any strength because I was 10 times stronger than any of them.
Right.
But you couldn't do that, right? You couldn't like force you know what I'm saying? That's not. And that's when I was like, oh my God, that's how that works. And even if I did use strength, I still probably wouldn't win. Because they were so good, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And that's when I was like, oh wow, like if you apply that shit to life, that's a big deal. Like if you stop forcing stuff, just that. If you can remember that, like leave the breathing out, don't force stuff. That's amazing.
It is.
It's freaking amazing.
Right. I'm so glad that I was able to help you, kind of learn that, because that's
my journey.
Was life-changing for me too. And I know other students as well, because they've told me. They're like, little things like that. Like it takes a different experience for everyone, but you have an epiphany. I've had a million epiphanies training that I could take and apply to my life from jiu-jitsu.
Right.
And I'm so glad that I was able to.
Oh, it's huge.
As a coach, that means so much to me, because the success and the happiness of my students, changing their lives.
Well,
that brings me so much satisfaction.
Yeah,
it
it
really
applies
does.
outside of the doors of that gym. And the other thing too, I was gonna say is like, we joke around a lot, right? Like I would get pissed.
Yeah.
But as soon as you get mad, you're done. Like you're beat. Because you're like, you know what I mean? As soon as you like get rigid, you're done. And that's how it is in life too. As soon as you get pissed, you're done.
Right.
Because either have your number, or you showed them your cards, or whatever it is. But you get mad in business, you get mad in a relationship, you freaking lose your temper. Like that's when things fall apart. But it's like that everywhere. And that is the message. You know what I mean? You teach that over and over and over and over and over. Like, hey man, as soon as you lose your cool, you're done. You're gonna lose.
Exactly.
And that's a fact in life too.
Right. You're not having rational thought.
No.
Right.
And your heart rate goes up and all that kind of stuff. When I was on the SWAT team, we used to train, we talked about that a little bit, but as soon as your heart rate hits 140, you lose all fine motor control.
Right.
So you get fired up, you get pissed off, you're like, motherfucker, you know what I mean? And as soon as your heart rate hits 140, you're done. Like you lose all fine motor control, you can't, you know what I'm saying? And that's the same thing you teach all the time in the gym too. I don't think people realize how much anger affects not only you as a person, like your stress level and all that, but the situations in life, whatever it may be, business, relationships, whatever. And that's why this stuff's so important.
Absolutely. And I realized that, getting out of, when I was getting divorced, my blood pressure, I remember one day I took my blood pressure, it was 182/112. I'm like, I'm on the verge of a heart attack. and my son's not going to have a father, and I really need to do something about this. So, I made life changes and so forth. But that's when I really, really focused on bettering myself mentally and applying all these things that I knew were important, that I had in fighting, but I wasn't necessarily applying them outside of the gym or the cage. And that's when I became good. And like anything else, it's practice, right? Like the breathing, I would practice for hours a day. And my doctor, he threw me on blood pressure meds, and I was on it for like 2 weeks. I'm like, I don't want to take blood pressure meds. I'm going to be relying on that, So I got off them, and I started doing my breathing and started doing like meditation, and my blood pressure came right back down to normal levels. I read a book, and actually Jorge Gracie gave me a book because I was talking to him one day, and I had a lot of back problems, especially when I turned 30. I was coming off a lot of fights. I've had a ton of fights in my 20s. I hit 30, and I felt like I was 90 years old. I had 4, moderate to severe herniations in my back. I was laid up on a couch, and he had told me he had back problems too. He gave me this book, and it talked about how back pain was very much mental. And back in the day, back pain didn't exist too much. Like people would work in fields, they'd be farmers, things like that. Back pain really wasn't a thing. And now people focus on that. And it's been a long time since I read the book, but there's actually it's a type of like hormone that your body produces. And when you're fixated, like you have back pain one day, you fixate on that, and it sends these receptors to that area, and then it becomes a chronic problem. So it kind of gave like a meditation to stop focusing on that. I also did some work, and I roll out my back, and I found a good chiropractor and so forth. But I did that for several months, and I noticed like my back pain, I went from like being laid up on a couch to feeling a lot better. And during that time, actually, I went and got an MRI, and they're like, oh yeah. And the lady's like, you need to stop doing jiu-jitsu. This is back, I'm trying to think, this was like early 30s. And she's like, yeah, you need to stop doing jiu-jitsu. I'm like, well, I'm not. So what can you do to fix me? Yeah. Well, there's nothing you can do. You have one spine. And I'm like, well, there's got to be some kind of rehab. And she kept telling me, no. I can prescribe pain medication for you. I'm like, I don't take pain medication. I'm like, what else can you do for me? Yeah. In typical Western medicine, right. There's nothing else I can do. I said, you know what? Fuck you. And I flipped her off.
Great. Yeah. That's back in the anger days.
Yeah. So I was a little angry.
Great, Scott. Yeah. Good approach.
Yeah. So, that's how I rolled.
Because you're so frustrated, right?
I'm like, don't tell me I'm not going to jiu-jitsu, because that's not going to happen. Yeah. So I walked out, and I found a good chiropractor, and I found some different things that could really help my back in different points of view, and literally my back pain almost completely dissipated. And like today, like now I'm 48, and I feel better than I did when I was like 25, honestly.
So to that point, there's a guy, Dr. Joe Dispenza. He's on YouTube. The guy's a genius. And I listen to his stuff all the time, and he says something like that. It's like your body gets in a habit of having a pain or a feeling or whatever, and then your brain responds to that, and it becomes a habit.
Right.
So like you wake up every morning, you're like, oh my God, and there's a whole bunch of different things. Yeah, you're fixated on it. It becomes a habit. And I'm not trying to be a doctor or anything like that, but I started practicing that. Like you get in a breakup or divorce, or you're stressed over whatever. You don't let your body control your mind. You flip that around, and you make your mind control your body, because that's how it's supposed to work. And I realized, I got broken. I got like, I don't know how many screws and plates from my waist down, a lot. And I used to wake up every morning and really have a hard time walking, and it's going away. And it's a trip. Like I don't get hurt as much. Again, even in the gym or riding or, working out or whatever, I don't get hurt near as much because I'm not pushing so hard. I'm not like, fuck, you know what I mean? I'm like relaxed, and I'm enjoying it and enjoying the process and making my mind do the work, right? I'm not there anymore. It was so weird before, because like I would wait for my body to shut down at that 40% mark, and then I'd be like, okay, I'm done. And now it's more of a mental game. It's more of a chess game.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, hey, I'm going to push hard here. I'm going to relax a little bit here. I'm going to push hard here and relax a little bit here. And it's just amazing. Like, I'm 51 and I feel better than I think I've ever felt. Like, I don't remember feeling this good. Mentally, for sure.
Right.
Like, I'm way better mentally. Like, a ton of therapy. We talked about that. Been doing that for a long, long time. Part of that was the gym. Part of that was actually going to professionals, all that kind of stuff. But, dude, I don't think I've ever felt better.
Yeah.
It's
I
amazing.
haven't either.
But it's because of your mind.
It is.
It's because of how you approach life. It's because of how you manage your stress. It's because of how you respond to people. Like, I can't imagine you ever saying fuck you to anybody right now.
No.
They'd have to, like, push you. I mean, to me you would, but that's
To
like
you,
joking
yeah,
around,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
All the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you know what I'm saying? Like, I can't imagine you ever getting mad.
I honestly don't even, I can't even remember the last time I really got really angered. And it used to happen 20 times a day. I used to run people off the road if they didn't signal.
For no reason.
Yeah, for no reason. I almost got hit.
It's not even about you. Yeah.
No, it had nothing to do with that. Now, literally nothing. Like, people cut me off, I'll go, do a couple breaths, and it won't even be a thought anymore.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So where before, things like that, I'd be angry all day because somebody cut me off on the road.
Because you chose to hang on to that emotion all day long.
Exactly. And I just won't do it anymore. And the quality of life for me is just,
massive.
It's been massive. And I almost, I want to give back. I know you're really big on giving back to people, and that's part of the reason that you do this show.
Right.
And I feel the same way, and if I can teach people, just to let things go, because I was angry all the time and over things that I had no control over. But I feel like it's a vicious cycle, especially today with everything that's going on in people's lives. And they get in this, like I said, a vicious cycle of just...
It's almost like a comfort to be pissed off.
It is.
It's like their habit.
Yeah, it's like I feel like they're kind of bored and they're not doing what they want to do.
Right.
You and I are doing something we're passionate about, what we want to do. We've made our lives around what makes us happy, and other people haven't. They're in their cubicles, kind of like sheep, doing what they want to do, but not doing what they want to do. And so they're grabbing on to these groups. Well, I want to be angry too, and I want to pick this to be,
It's almost like a victim mindset kind of thing.
Yeah, and they don't realize how toxic it is to not only their happiness and all that, but their health.
Yeah.
It's so toxic to their health, and now and they don't take care of themselves,
Yeah.
because they're wasting time, reading blogs on the computer or watching their favorite news station, which is putting out propaganda, instead of going to the gym and hanging around positive people, doing things that really make them happiness and bring them or sports,
or whatever,
yeah, learning a skill,
right? Keeping your brain engaged.
And I know, and I appreciate you calling me a master. Like, I don't consider myself a master at all. I feel like I'm a student every day, and I'm always like, and not just like technique. Yeah, I'm always refining technique, but also the mental. There's so much for me to learn. And get better and refine like my mental aspects. So like when I'm training, I'm relaxed, but there's always levels of relaxation. I can always relax more. My breathing could always be better and more in tune.
But you're grateful, Scott.
Very.
That's why you're a master, because you're grateful.
I am
like
very
you
grateful.
Practice being grateful every day. And one of the things I was going to comment on too is you have like the 10 rules. Show up on time, be early. Those are respect things.
Right.
And that's also like, if you have respect, then you are grateful. But one of the things, we always do before we get on that mat is we, bow, and that's like, hey, I'm grateful to be here. I'm grateful to be a student. I'm grateful to be able to learn from someone like you. And I'm grateful to be able to train with some really amazing people that are here.
Right.
But you step on there with that attitude. You don't step on there with all right, let's see who I can whoop. You step on there with, okay, I'm going to learn. I'm here to better myself as a human being, and as an individual, and in this sport, in this craft. But just that act of doing that, it's almost like we should do that every day when we wake up. You know what I mean? Like stand up, and, you know what I mean? Be like, all right, I'm grateful to be alive today.
Right.
But you have that mental, that's how you are all the time.
I do.
You're always grateful. You're always humble. You're always like, hey man, how can I help you? I've never seen you get sideways.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Never, the only time I actually seen you get like irritated is if somebody does come in there with an attitude
Without
or try to
respect,
bully
yeah.
somebody or stack somebody or whatever. Like not, when somebody's gonna get hurt,
Mm-hmm.
then you react not angrily, but you're like, all right, enough.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
I
let me
shut
show
it
you what
down
that
very,
feels like.
very
Yeah,
quickly.
Yeah, because you don't want people to get hurt.
Absolutely.
Because then you're not learning, right? Like, then you're all
Right.
fucked up.
Right. They're not learning, and they're not seeing that's not what jiu-jitsu is about.
Well, it's not what any martial arts is
No,
really about. Yeah,
absolutely
yeah,
not.
I can't imagine.
Absolutely
Yeah.
not. So yeah, I'm very grateful. And that being said, one thing, a trick that I learned, which helps me wake up happy every day, is I'll tell myself a joke. Like I think I'm pretty damn funny.
You're not that funny, dude.
I'm pretty funny.
Short jokes, you're funny.
There you go.
Yeah.
So
like whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't even say it, but yeah.
So
I get them every day. Almost.
I'll come up with some sarcasm in my head when I first wake up,
Yeah.
and I'll kind of tell myself a joke, and I'll give myself like a little laugh. And laughing, making yourself laugh when
Yeah.
you first wake, before you even get out of bed, it's amazing how it automatically turns a switch in your head,
yeah.
and you're positive for the whole day.
I just fart really loud
Yeah.
when I wake up and I start laughing.
Hey, whatever floats your boat, you know what I mean?
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because that shit's funny. I mean, that's fun.
Absolutely, man. Hey, if that does it for
You're
you.
much more
yeah.
mature than I am. Yeah.
Not a lot more, but a little. Yeah. Yeah. Whatever does it for you. I mean, that's kind of what does it for me. Being from New Jersey, sarcasm is my thing.
Oh,
so
yeah.
that
It's nonstop.
yeah,
I don't know how many things I get a day from you that are like.
I know, but I feel like I'm just helping you with your mental toughness.
You are.
I mean, I'm trying to build
It's
you
funny
up.
stuff, though.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's a good time.
We have a great time, man.
Yeah.
My best friends are the people that I joke the most with.
Yeah,
If you can
yeah.
let go with someone,
Yeah.
I think those people are the most important people to have in your life. The people that you can truly be yourself with and joke with.
But then also you can talk to, too.
Yeah.
Like, hey, man, this is going on or whatever. It's funny.
But we do.
Yeah, we do. It's when we
totally
come in, and I jump on the bike or whatever. Like the first 10 minutes is we're talking about life and hey man, how's things going? How are you? And it's actually a deep conversation. Normally it's about life and relationships
sure.
and things like that. And you're in a really healthy relationship now too.
I am. Yeah, I found a great girl. I was never. It's actually my first long distance relationship. She's from Chicago. And we met out in Arizona a little over a year ago, and we just really hit it off, and didn't expect it to go anywhere. But we literally have talked every single day on the phone. And she came out about 2 weeks later, and like, wow, maybe we really do have some chemistry. And we've been going strong ever since. She's actually visiting me right now. I'm gonna fly
Her
back.
family's out too.
Yeah. They will be. They're coming out tomorrow.
Cool.
She has an amazing family, and we try to alternate. We make it work. So I'll go out there, or she'll come out here at least once a month for a week or so. And again, adding that long distance to it actually is strenuous at times, but with the right person, it's worth sacrifices like that. So
You choose
we've
it,
made it
and
work.
she chooses you.
Right. And
We talk about that all the time on here.
and
If you choose
that
it,
feels great.
and you're faithful, you're not. Yeah, you don't
100%,
cheat.
100%,
You're a solid
man.
dude. Yeah.
100%.
That's super cool.
No, that's honor and integrity are my number one things in life. Like you don't cheat. If you're with someone, you're with them, and you don't cheat. I don't lie. I don't do those. Those things are the one thing that you have that you can truly take 100% control of is your integrity, your word and your integrity. So if I give my word, no matter what, I will honor it. I don't do well with flaky people. Like your word is your word, and that's all you have. So you have your word, you have your integrity, and those are the only true things that you can completely control. And so those
If
are.
you don't
those are
have
very
that,
good.
something's wrong. Like that's a red
Very
flag.
much so. Very much so.
Like I didn't have that for a long time. I think you knew. I mean, you know some of my backstory, and it was always a reaction to something going on in my life, like to protect myself, or something, guilt or shame or whatever from past things or whatever. But that's a huge red flag. If somebody doesn't have integrity and they can't tell the truth, those are red flags. Like something's wrong.
And it was you were unhappy, right?
Well, I was super messed up from the fire department, shit like
Right,
that too. But once you break that integrity, once you break that truth, then you can't. It's almost like you can't stop lying. Like you're pretty much screwed until you totally come clean with everything, which is where I had to be to start over. You know, which is part of the reason why we're doing this, because you don't know what to fix unless you tell the truth.
100%.
Like you have to tell the whole truth, and then you know where to start.
Yeah,
you know,
that's
and that's
tough.
a big
That's
part
not-
of it. It's
it's not
hard.
easy,
It
yeah.
sucks, man. It sucks. But you've always done that, and that's another, you know, it's another impressive thing about you is you've had your shit together enough to do that, and which is why now you have a healthy relationship, and you know, I know I'm gonna have one too, because I'm in that spot now, because you attract what you are.
Absolutely. And for the record, I wasn't always like that. You
No.
know, when I was younger, I
think
wasn't.
everybody's made mistakes.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's how you
I would
learn.
lie and do this. And
Yeah.
it was always to cover up like insecurities
Yeah, totally.
or whatever trauma.
Me
you know,
too.
make me feel. You know, like I said, I never got any. You know, like from my parents or my family, like, hey, great job or anything. So I would make up lies and exaggerate things that I would do and things like that, and it still didn't do any good. But yeah, and then
'Cause it has
then
to
I would
come
just
from-
be unhappy with myself. Then I'd feel like more of I feel like a failure.
Yeah.
You know.
And then, you know, it's funny, like now I realize, like I've never actually loved myself until now. Like I'm actually proud of who I am, but I should have been forever, you know? But I'm actually, like I love myself for once in my life. So then I don't need to do that shit. And I don't need stuff from outside to make me feel good.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
I do, because I feel the same way.
It's fucking trippy.
And again, I didn't learn this until my 40s.
Yeah.
So it's
I didn't
amazing.
either. But you have to be by yourself for a little
Wasted
while.
40 years.
Yeah. Well, like you were saying, I know you spent some time alone.
I did.
You know, and I'm in that spot, you know, finally in my life. Like this is the first time I've been alone in my whole entire life. And it's incredibly powerful. And that's when you actually start to love yourself. You're like, wait a second. Like
That you don't
everything around-
need you don't need someone else
to tell you
fill
that
a
you're
void.
cool. Or,
Yeah.
And I
Totally.
remember there was a time in my life too. I always just be like you. I'd be like, man, I just want somebody to love me. When really somebody should have said, well, look in the mirror and start there. You know, and I know that's deep and weird, but it's true. It's super true, man, and that changes everything. And then you can walk around with confidence, and you can walk around and you attract different people. You talk to different people. You know what I'm saying? Like everything's different then.
For sure.
It changes, and you're not playing like a bullshit game, and you're not hanging out with people. You know, I know all people are good, but there are different levels of development. I'll say that, right? And
Absolutely.
it changes. Like everything changes around you. You change your friends. You change your. I mean, everything changes.
Everything in life is about perspective. And when you love yourself and you have that confidence, then yeah, you're right. You attract the same. And what I noticed is I would, you know, even 10, 15 years ago, I have like a lot of these negative people in my life that were just really toxic. And I certainly didn't feel like I reached out and brought them in intentionally, but they just kind of find you because I wasn't in a good place in my life. And ever since then, they just don't come into my life.
Right.
And I don't
They start falling off.
They do. They
Yeah.
do. They go away. And it's really been an amazing thing. And like you said, and that makes you love yourself more. When you love yourself and you're confident and you're grateful, everything around you changes. And people become more grateful for you, and you just have better relationships all the way around.
Yeah.
And
It's hard. It's a hard journey though to get there. You know, like we both had relationships that were toxic, and when those fall away, that's when you really wake up. That's when your brain's like, holy shit, and then you see the truth too.
Right.
You see what was really going on in that relationship, and you see really what was happening, and then you kind of deal with that. At least I do. You know, I deal with that a little bit. Like, okay, how was I contributing to that? You know, I was probably doing the same thing they were doing, and now that needs to change because I don't want to be that person anymore. I don't want to be a cheater. I don't want to be negative. I don't want to be disrespectful. I don't want to be angry. So then you change it, you know. And one person told me one time, I was in therapy once, and I was like, yeah, you know, they say, you know, once you're angry, you're always angry. Once you're a cheater, you're always a cheater. And this lady, super smart lady, she starts laughing, you know. And I was like, what are you laughing at? She goes, well, if you can't change, then why would I even be here?
right.
And I was like, you're exactly right. Right? So absolutely you can change. Absolutely you can make changes in your life to be grateful and to be humble and to be, you know, a nice person per se.
We're proof of that.
Yeah, I mean, totally proof of that. You know, my whole life's changed. I kid you not, Scott. You know, and you've known me for a long time. But, you know, on the outside, everything looks great. But I can tell you, like on the inside, the last probably 3 or 4 months, my whole life is completely different and it's 100% better. But when I say my whole life, like my whole life in here, it's way better.
And a lot of it is, you know, some of it's because of doing this, some of it's like I ask you to come on the show, and I have all these people in my life I didn't even realize were so amazing that have so much to share and can help so many people just from a conversation like this.
And I've seen it. You know, I don't know if I've told you, but I've seen an incredible change in you over the last several months.
Yeah.
But like you said, we've known each other. You've always been like a fun guy, and always enjoyed hanging out with you and all that. But I could always tell there was something going on.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, I really have seen like a calmness come over you in the last several months.
Super. I'm way more confident. I'm just, you know, but a lot of that's from therapy. But it's also, really it comes down to telling the truth. You know, hey man, I cheated, I messed up my marriage. You know, I'm gonna change that. And you know, the main reason why we're doing this is so the kids can see, so they don't make the same mistakes.
Right.
And somebody asked me, actually my ex-wife Melissa asked me, you met her. She goes, you know, are you gonna tell Nate, my son? I'm like, yeah, absolutely, I'm telling Nate. I'm telling everybody. Because I don't want him to do the same thing I did. I want him to know that's a red flag. I want him to know, hey, that's not okay. I want him to be better, right?
Right.
And that's the whole point.
Right.
That's the whole point. It's not like, oh, look, you know what I'm saying? That's the point of this. Like you share it so other people can help and be better and know that there's a way and, you know, there's hope and all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
Not like we're all going to die tomorrow or nothing like that, but it is, man. Like mental health is freaking powerful. And it's so much more fun now.
Yeah.
Like I laugh and shit all the time.
Right.
Like, I mean, when you came in today, we were freaking yucking it up.
Already
like,
talking
seriously,
shit.
We're going, like, there's a little space right there.
We can still do it.
We'll show these guys how long it takes.
Make sure we have enough
We'll
time.
show these guys how long it takes me to like pass out. Like 3 seconds.
And then
right?
refuse water.
You think I can last 3 seconds?
Or maybe if you have,
I think I could.
maybe
Dude.
if we have 10 feet
I'll just
between
take.
us.
Let's take a deep breath.
Yeah.
This is funny stuff,
Absolutely.
but that's the kind of, you know, like when you're in a good spot, that doesn't matter.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like that's fun. You're learning. You know what I'm saying? That's good stuff. And you know, you elevate your game so much when you're in a good place, and then the people around you elevate their game too. And the people that don't want to elevate just fall away.
Yeah.
They're not there anymore, like you said. Like there's nobody negative.
No.
There's no one
not.
negative in my life now. No one.
You know that old thing that they say, you know, you're most like the 5 people that you hang around the most?
Yeah, that's who you
It's
are.
100%.
Yeah.
So that's why it's very important for me. I recognize I would hang around some negative people and it would come off on me and then I would become negative. So I just don't do it anymore.
Right.
And so the negative people they never come in.
Yeah.
You know?
And isn't it funny too, like when you're in that spot, you can pretty much talk to anybody now, can't you?
Anyone.
Like you go out to have lunch or whatever, you sit down, you can talk to anybody. Even like at the grocery store, like, hey man, what's going on? How are you?
I used to not get along with a lot of people because they would piss me off or whatever. Now, as long as they're not super negative or mean or disrespectful people, I can literally get along with anyone. It doesn't matter from what walk of life they come from, what life point of views they have. It doesn't matter as long as they're nice people
and they're not trying to hurt anybody.
Exactly. I can find common ground and relate to them and have a great conversation and learn from their perspective. And I like that. Where before I was more like, well, you don't think like I do, so just get out of my face.
Right.
Now not at all. Like now I love hearing people's different perspective and having like a, you know,
sometimes you have the best dialogue with people you don't
Totally.
even know.
Totally.
Yeah. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, it's perspectives that I never even thought about. I love that.
Yeah.
I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah.
I really
Well, you're
enjoy
grateful
that.
for everything. I think that's the thing, you know, people, it's just amazing how you start, like everything opens up. You know what I mean? You don't have to be shy anymore. You're not comparing yourself too. That's another thing. Like I can't imagine you ever comparing yourself to anybody. I used to do that all the time.
Did you?
Yeah, all the time.
Yeah.
You know, I'd always be like, oh, fuck,
height?
I need to do better. Well, yeah.
Or, yeah.
Yeah, we're totally gonna do it. But no, like seriously, I did.
Yeah.
Like, fuck, man, I'm short. Like it really actually bothered me. And I brought that up in therapy a few times. She's like, are you kidding me? She's like, you're the biggest person ever. Like your heart's giant. Like why would you care about how tall you are? I'm like, 'cause I can't fucking see. You know what I mean? But it's like we're kidding around, right?
Yeah.
But it's true. I was like, you know, I'd be at a bar. I'm like, you know what I mean? Like joking around. But now it's just funny. It's funny to me now. I'm like, why would I even think like that? That's something, number one, you can't change. And number two, it doesn't even fucking matter. And no one would really see me. You know what I'm saying? I mean, we joke around.
Yeah.
But it's so funny to me how when you stop that comparison, like your level just, it launches. And that was, I mean, I did that for a while. You know, I had a rule. I was on a ladder company. I was a captain on a ladder company. I was like, anyone that's over 6 foot ain't gonna be on this truck. And I actually picked my crew. I fucking did.
Really?
Yeah, I did.
I did.
And it was funny.
Yeah.
I was kind of kidding, but I was kind of not.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't have been on my crew, dude. No.
Really? That would have been sad. Yeah, that would have been sad, man.
Well, one, because I don't make gear.
I think I would have won you over with my sarcasm, my Jersey charm. You know?
Charm. But anyways, man, that was a great conversation. I really appreciate
Absolutely.
it.
That was a pleasure, man. Always great talking to you. I love it. I love
you
it,
too.
man.
And yeah, you know, I mean, the mental aspect of everything in life, it applies, you know, and your story is really amazing, number one, but what you practice every day is mental health. You practice it every day.
I do.
The byproduct of that is whooping some ass, but it's the mental health aspect, you know what I mean? You don't ever have to.
Right.
Like, I can't ever imagine you even getting in a fight outside the gym.
I haven't been in a fight in years.
There's no reason.
And, you know, it's, you know, I think about it. Number one, I'm a big guy, so I'm not exactly a target, but I think it's the way I carry myself. I carry myself with confidence, and I think that really keeps people from kind of messing with you, you know? Like,
but you're nice, though.
I am. I'm
you know
always
what I mean? You're
nice.
always like, hey, man, how's it going? Like, what's up? You know what I mean? You're not,
and I
you don't
make
walk around like
sure,
a big guy.
because I think a lot of people have a preconceived notion of me, even people that come into the gym, and I actually get this a lot, that they think, they're like, oh, well, you're a lot nicer than I thought. I'm like, okay. They're like, yeah, you're kind of intimidating. I thought, you know, since you were like a fighter or whatever, you'd be kind, because that's what a lot of people, and they're projecting their insecurities. I don't have insecurities.
Right.
I don't want to do that. So I actually try to make sure I go above and beyond to show
just to be
just
nice.
a normal guy.
It disarms people.
Yeah.
You know what I realized a long time ago too that was funny is that I'm that size where, like, if you kick my ass, you're gonna look like an asshole.
Right.
Because you're a bully. But if I whoop you, then you're gonna look really bad. So most people don't mess with me. You know what I mean? Because they're like, what if he gets lucky? You know what I mean? Because everybody gets lucky standing up.
That's
you know
right.
What I mean? But
see,
no, it's
you find the positives.
I find a positive to it, right?
Yeah.
It's funny though. You know what I mean? But like, I don't ever, you know, I don't think I've ever, well, not ever, but I can tell you in like the last 6 months, I don't get mad. I don't compare. No one ever like bows up. Never. Because I'm not even in that world. I'm not even in that space anymore. I'm not pissed off at all. It's a trip.
Yeah.
Like the energy that you put out makes a big difference. And just being respectful disarms people. Because if you're respectful and grateful, like, it's really hard to be mean to somebody like that. It's really hard to be shitty to somebody who's dialed in.
100%.
You know, and it's, you know, how you look at people. Like we talk about just respect when you walk. You know, you look up, you look people in the eye. Like we're talking right now. You know, we're not bowing up. We're not challenging each other. It's respect. And you shake a hand, a firm handshake, and you know what I'm saying? Like, just everything about you as a person in general, a male or a female, doesn't matter. That's all super important in how you behave and how you interact as a human being. So, you know.
So important. And yeah, it's been a pleasure, man.
Yeah.
Always.
Are you ready? Like we're gonna shut the cameras off. We're gonna go.
We can go right now. Yeah, absolutely. I don't want to look like a bully.
Yeah, well, you are a bully. Yeah. Scott, thanks, man.
Thank
I really
you,
appreciate
man.
it, buddy. I
So
love
great.
you. You're a
Thank
good
you. Love
man.
you too,
You're a
man.
good man. Everybody, thank you very much. This is Scott Tannenbaum. I forgot my name. And Scott Freymuller with the Knot. Really appreciate you guys watching. I hope this was beneficial for you.